The doors to the Galactic Summit Station slid open with a soft hiss, and Doyan stepped into a world that made him feel smaller than he had ever felt in his life. The ceiling stretched so high above him that he could barely see it. Through the floating platforms and massive crystalline structures, beings of every shape and size moved through the grand hall, some walking on two legs like him, others slithering, floating, or moving in ways he couldn't even name. He adjusted the collar of his diplomatic uniform and tried not to stare. At 23 years old, he was the youngest diplomat Earth had ever sent to a major summit. His dark hair was neatly combed, his posture straight, despite his nervousness. He stood just under 6 feet tall, which was average for a human, but made him look like a child compared to most of the species around him. A massive reptilian being brushed past him without a glance, nearly knocking him aside. Doyon steadied himself and kept walking toward the registration area. He could feel eyes on him from every direction. Some curious, some dismissive, some openly amused. "You must be the new Terran representative," the voice came from above him. Doyon looked up to see a Vexith, one of the proud reptilian warrior species he had studied. This one was nearly 8 feet tall, with deep green scales and amber eyes that looked at him the way a cat might look at a mouse. "I am Velkara. I serve on the Trade Council." Doyon bowed slightly, the way he had been taught. "It's an honor to meet you. I'm Doyon, representing Earth in the resource allocation negotiations." Velkara's mouth opened in what might have been a smile, showing rows of sharp teeth. "How fascinating. Earth sends a hatchling to speak for them. Tell me, young Terran, have you even lived through 2 decades yet?" "I'm 23 standard years," Doyen replied, keeping his voice steady. 23. Velkara let out a sound like rocks grinding together, which Doyon recognized as laughter. "My youngest son is older than you, and we still don't let him speak at family meals." Other beings nearby had stopped to listen, and several joined in the laughter. Doyen felt his face grow warm, but forced himself to smile politely. "I'll do my best to represent my people well." "I'm sure you will try," Velkara said, still amused. "Though I wonder if Earth understands what they're asking for. These negotiations determine mining rights across 12 systems. Perhaps they should have sent someone with actual experience." Before Doyon could respond, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. "That's enough, Velkara." Ambassador Hyjin appeared at Doyen's side, her presence commanding, despite being even shorter than him. She had served Earth's diplomatic corps for 30 years, and her reputation preceded her. Doyon graduated top of his class. Earth chose him for this assignment specifically. Velkara dipped his massive head in acknowledgement, but his eyes still glinted with amusement. "Of course, Ambassador. I meant no offense. I simply find it curious that humans send their young to do such important work." "Perhaps that's why we're successful," Hyjin replied coolly. "Fresh perspectives often see solutions that old minds miss." The Vexith diplomat moved away, still chuckling to himself. Once he was gone, Hyjin turned to Doyon with a sympathetic look. "Don't let them get to you. They test everyone who's new." "I understand," Doyon said quietly. "I was prepared for this." Being prepared and experiencing it are different things. She guided him through the crowd toward the diplomatic quarters. Most species here measure worth by age, size, or military power. Humans don't rank high in any of those categories in their eyes. They reached a quieter corridor, and Hyjin stopped to face him directly. "Listen carefully, Doyon. You're here because you're brilliant at what you do. I've seen your analysis reports. I've watched you solve problems that stumped people twice your age. But these beings don't know that yet. You'll have to prove yourself, and it won't be easy." "I'm ready," Doyon assured her. "Good, the formal dinner is tonight. Every major delegate will be there. Stay quiet, observe, and learn. Don't try to make speeches or impress anyone yet." "Understood?" "Understood." That evening, Doyon found himself in the grand dining hall, seated at a table with representatives from 6 different species. The room was enormous, filled with hundreds of delegates, and the noise was overwhelming. Dishes of food he couldn't identify were constantly being served by floating drones. The conversation at his table had turned to warfare and hunting traditions. A massive insectoid being was describing a coming Ovag ritual. where young warriors had to track and kill a predator twice their size, using only primitive weapons. Among the Vexith, Velkara announced loudly from a nearby table. We consider hunting the highest art form. Our greatest heroes are not politicians or scientists, but hunters who can track prey across multiple star systems. A noble tradition, someone agreed. Though I wonder what the Terrans hunt. Besides, perhaps small rodents in their laboratories. Laughter rippled through several tables. Doyan continued eating slowly, his expression neutral. He had learned long ago that reacting to taunts only encouraged more of them. Tell us, young Terran, Velkara called out, clearly enjoying himself. What does your species consider a worthy hunt? Do humans even have predators on your world anymore, or have you made everything safe and soft? Doyan looked up calmly. Earth still has predators, yes. But humans were never the biggest or strongest animals on our planet. We survived differently. How fascinating. Please, educate us. Velkara's tone dripped with mock interest. We learned to be patient, to track things for days or weeks until they were too tired to run, to adapt to any environment, to work together and think ahead. Doyan spoke simply, without pride or boasting. Humans don't win because we're the strongest. We win because we don't give up. There was a moment of silence, then more laughter. Persistence. Someone shouted, "The great human advantage is stubbornness." That, and making friends with their food animals, another voice added. I heard they actually keep predators in their homes as companions. Velkara shook his head in apparent wonder. Earth sends us a philosopher. How charming. I hope your words serve you better in negotiations than they would on a hunt. Doyan simply nodded and returned to his meal. Around him, the conversation moved on to other topics, and he was largely forgotten. He spent the rest of the evening watching, listening, taking mental notes of every interaction he observed. When he finally returned to his quarters late that night, Hijin was waiting in the corridor. You handled that well, she said. Better than I expected. They don't respect us yet, Doyan replied. That's fine. Respect takes time. It does. But be careful, Doyan. Some of these species have been part of galactic society for thousands of years. They see humans as newcomers, barely worth noticing. Changing that view won't be easy. I know. Doyan looked out the massive window at the stars beyond. But like I said, humans are patient. We know how to wait for the right moment. Ijin smiled slightly. Get some rest. Tomorrow, the real work begins. As she walked away, Doyan remained at the window for a long moment, looking out at the vast darkness of space. Somewhere out there was Earth, the small blue planet where humanity had learned to survive against impossible odds. They hadn't been the biggest, or strongest, or fastest. But they were still here, and Doyan intended to make sure the galaxy understood what that meant. The morning brought news that rippled through the station like electricity through water. Doyan was reviewing trade documents in his quarters when Hijin burst through the door, her usually calm face showing genuine excitement. Hunter Chief Ravik is returning, she announced. 3 days ahead of schedule. Doyan looked up from his datapad. Should I know who that is? Ravik is a legend among the Vexith. He's their greatest warrior, been patrolling the frontier systems for over 20 years. If half the stories about him are true, he's hunted criminals and pirates across a quarter of the galaxy. Hijin moved to the window, looking out at the docking platforms. The Vexith delegates are already preparing a ceremony. This could change the whole dynamic of the summit. Will it affect our negotiations? Everything affects everything here, Hijin replied. Just stay alert and keep doing what you're doing. Observe and learn. By midday, the entire station seemed to be buzzing with anticipation. Doyan decided to continue his work in one of the public garden areas, a massive open space filled with plants from dozens of worlds. He found a quiet bench near a fountain and spread out his documents, reviewing the resource allocation proposals Earth needed to present as he worked. He noticed groups of Vexith passing by, their voices excited and proud. He caught fragments of their conversations, all about the returning hero. According to them, Ravik had single-handedly stopped 3 pirate fleets, tracked down the galaxy's most dangerous criminals. and earned respect from species that normally looked down on the Vexith. Velkara appeared with several other Vexith delegates, moving through the garden like they owned it. When they spotted Doyon, Velkara's expression turned amused again. "Still reading your papers, young Terran? You should come to the docking bay. You might learn something about real strength and honor." The other Vexith chuckled, and they continued on without waiting for a response. Doyon returned to his work, but he couldn't help being curious. A human security officer named Juwan stopped by the garden on her rounds. She was older than Doyon, with sharp eyes and the bearing of someone who had seen combat. "You staying here during the arrival ceremony?" she asked. "I wasn't planning to attend," Doyon replied. "I figured it was a Vexith matter. The whole station's going to be there. Every species wants to see the famous hunter chief."
Ow.
Guan looked at him thoughtfully. "You might want to go just to understand the politics. Ravik has influence with a lot of the delegates here. Maybe I will then." "Thank you." An hour later, announcements echoed through the station that Ravik's ship was approaching. Doyon gathered his documents and decided to head toward the main docking bay, even though he planned to stay in the background. As he walked through the corridors, he saw beings from every species hurrying in the same direction. The docking bay was enormous. It's designed to accommodate ships of vastly different sizes. When Doyon arrived, hundreds of beings had already gathered, forming a massive crowd. He stayed near the back, content to watch from a distance. The Vexith delegation stood at the front, Okara among them, all wearing ceremonial armor that gleamed under the station lights. Other species arranged themselves by importance, the whole scene feeling like a carefully choreographed dance of politics and power. A deep rumble signaled the arrival of the ship. Doyon watched as a vessel painted in dark red and black settled onto the landing platform. It was a military ship, scarred and dented from countless battles. The crowd fell silent as the boarding ramp lowered with a hiss of hydraulics. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then a figure appeared at the top of the ramp, and even from his distant position, Doyon could tell this was someone extraordinary. Hunter Chief Ravik was massive, even for a Vexith. He stood at least 9 feet tall, his scales a deep crimson color marked with silver scars that told stories of 1,000 fights. He wore armor that looked like it had been through wars, and his eyes were the color of molten gold. Those eyes swept across the gathered crowd with the intensity of a true predator. The Vexith delegation began to cheer, and other species joined in with their own forms of greeting. Velkara stepped forward, clearly preparing to welcome the hero home. The crowd pressed closer, everyone wanting to be near the legendary warrior. But Ravik didn't move toward the welcoming committee. His golden eyes continued to scan the crowd, as if he was searching for something specific. The cheering began to fade into confused murmurs. What was he looking for? Then those predator eyes locked onto something, and Ravik began to move. He walked down the ramp with slow, deliberate steps. The crowd parted before him instinctively. The way prey animals move aside for a hunting cat, Doyon watched with the same curiosity as everyone else, wondering who the hunter chief was seeking. Probably some important delegate or military commander, maybe even the station's governor. The crowd near the front shifted, creating a path. Everyone assumed Ravik was heading toward the Vexith delegation, toward Velkara and the others waiting to honor him. But the massive warrior walked past them without a glance, his eyes fixed on something beyond. He was walking in Doyon's direction. No, that couldn't be right. There were dozens of important beings between them. Ravik must be heading toward someone nearby. Doyon glanced around, trying to figure out who commanded such focused attention from the legendary hunter, but Ravik kept coming. Pushing through the crowd now, his massive form moving with purpose and speed, being scrambled to get out of his way. The entire bay had gone silent. Everyone trying to understand what was happening, Doyon realized with growing confusion that Ravik was looking directly at him. The golden eyes hadn't wavered once. The hunter chief was walking straight toward him. There was no one else in that line. The young diplomat's heart began to pound. Had he somehow offended the Vexith without knowing it? Was this some kind of challenge? He stood his ground because running would be pointless and undignified. Even though every instinct told him that this massive predator approaching him was dangerous, Revok stopped 3 feet away. Up close, he was even more intimidating. The scars on his scales told stories Doyon couldn't begin to imagine. One of his arms had been replaced with a mechanical prosthetic that looked more weapon than limb. His golden eyes studied Doyon's face with an intensity that made the young human want to look away. Then, slowly, the hunter chief raised his right hand and placed it over his heart. His left hand extended forward, palm up, in a gesture Doyon recognized from his studies as a Vexith sign of deep respect, reserved for honored equals or superiors. The entire station seemed to hold its breath, in a voice like distant thunder. Revok spoke. The translator embedded in Doyon's ear rendered the words clearly, "Little brother, you have grown." Doyon's mind went blank with shock. Brother? Little brother? There had to be some mistake. He'd never met this being before in his life. He would have remembered meeting a 9-foot-tall legendary warrior. But then something flickered in his memory. A cold place. Snow and ice. A wounded creature that shouldn't have been kind to him, but was. A promise made when he was very small. Elder brother Doyon heard himself say, his voice steady despite his shock. He raised his own hand to his heart, then extended it palm up, mirroring Revok's gesture perfectly. I have tried to honor what you taught me. Revok's fierce expression softened into something that might have been a smile. He stepped forward and pulled Doyon into an embrace. One massive arm wrapping around the young human carefully. Mindful of his smaller size, the crowd erupted into chaos. Beings shouted questions in dozens of languages. The Vexith delegation stood frozen in disbelief. Velcara's face showed pure shock, his mouth hanging open in a way that would have been funny under different circumstances. When Revok released him, he kept one hand on Doyon's shoulder, a gesture of protection and pride. He turned to face the crowd, his voice carrying across the entire bay. I see confusion in your eyes, Revok said. I see questions. That is good. You should question. And I will answer, because this human deserves to have his story told. This young being that some of you have mocked, that some of you have dismissed as weak or unimportant, is my brother in the truest sense that word can mean. Velcara found his voice. Hunter Chief, surely there is some mistake. This is a human, a Terran. How could you possibly do you question my judgment, Velcara? Revok's voice dropped to a dangerous growl. Do you suggest I do not know my own brother? No, Hunter Chief. I only meant, then be silent and listen. Within minutes, word had spread to every corner of the station. By the time station officials arranged a formal gathering in the main assembly hall, it seemed like every being on the summit had crammed inside. The hall could hold thousands, and every seat was filled. Those who couldn't find seats stood along the walls or floated near the ceiling, all desperate to hear what the legendary center chief would say. Doyon found himself on the raised platform at the front of the hall. Sitting in a chair that felt far too large and important, Revok stood beside him like a guardian, one hand still resting on the back of Doyon's chair. Hyjin sat on his other side, her expression carefully neutral, though Doyon could see the questions in her eyes. Ambassador Thorax, the neutral party who led the Galactic Council, called for silence. Thorax was a Quillen, a species known for fairness and patience. They looked like walking trees, with bark-like skin and leaves that changed color with their emotions. Right now, those leaves were bright orange with curiosity. Hunter Chief Revok Thorax began, their voice carrying through the hall's amplification system. You have made a claim that has surprised us all. You call this young human your brother. Many here would like to understand how such a bond was formed between a Vexith warrior and a Terran diplomat. They would like to understand because they have underestimated him, Revok replied bluntly, because they look at his small size and young age and think they see weakness. They look at his people and see a species that has only just reached the stars. They are fools. Uncomfortable shifting rippled through the crowd. No one was used to the Hunter Chief speaking so harshly, especially about the gathered delegates. I will tell you a story, Revok continued, and when I am finished, you will understand why I call this human brother. You will understand why disrespecting him is the same as disrespecting me. And perhaps if you are wise, you will begin to understand what it truly means that humans have joined galactic society. The hall fell completely silent. Even the translation devices seemed to hush. 15 years ago, I was hunting a criminal called the Scarvan. This creature had killed dozens across 3 systems, always staying one step ahead of authorities. I tracked him for 2 months, following a trail that led into the frontier territories, into spaces where civilization has barely touched. Ravik's golden eyes grew distant, seeing something far away. I found his ship near a small ice planet. The world had no name, only a designation number. There was one human research station there, studying the planet's unusual geology. The Scarvan ship had crashed, but he had survived. So had I barely. My ship took critical damage in our final exchange. I managed to land, but the crash destroyed most of my systems. My weapons were gone, my communications dead, my medical supplies scattered across a frozen wasteland. And the Scarvan was still alive, still hunting, now hunting me. A Vexith in the crowd spoke up. But Hunter Chief, you are the greatest warrior of our people. Surely one criminal, even wounded, I had 3 broken ribs, shattered leg, and internal bleeding. Ravik cut him off. The temperature was 40 degrees below freezing in your human measurements. The Scarvan was injured, but not as badly as me. For the first time in my life, I was the prey instead of the hunter. Doyan watched Ravik's face as he spoke. The proud warrior looked almost vulnerable as he recalled the memory. Managed to drag myself into a canyon, trying to find shelter. I thought I would die there in that frozen place, far from home, my hunt unfinished. And then I heard a sound. Footsteps in the snow, small footsteps. Ravik looked down at Doyan, and something like wonder crossed his scarred face. A human child found me. He could not have been more than 8 of your years old. He was small, even for a human child, wearing a bright red coat against the snow. He should have run screaming when he saw me. A Vexith warrior, covered in blood, lying in the snow like a dying beast. Instead, this tiny creature came closer. I tried to warn him away. I didn't want the Scarvan to find him because of me. But he didn't leave. He looked at me with these serious eyes and said, "You're hurt really bad. I'm going to help you," just like that. No fear, no hesitation. A decision made. Murmurs ran through the crowd. Several beings looked at Doyan with new interest. The child ran back to the research station and returned with medical supplies. Basic things meant for human injuries. But he had somehow figured out what might work for me. Bandages, chemical heat packs, pain medicine. Over the next 3 days, that small human child came back again and again, bringing whatever he could steal without the adults noticing. He told me his name, Doyun. He talked to me while he worked, keeping me conscious when I wanted to give up. He told me about Earth, about his mother who studied rocks and ice, about the stars he wanted to explore someday, and he told me about the monster he had seen in the mountains. Ravik's expression darkened. The child described the Scarvan perfectly, though he didn't know what it was. He had seen it circling the research station, watching, waiting. The creature knew humans were prey species, weak and soft. It was biding its time, recovering from its injuries before it attacked. On the 3rd day, the Scarvan made its move. I heard the alarms from the research station, heard the screams. I was still too weak to fight properly, but I tried to move. I had to. That child had saved my life. I would not let him die. The hall was so quiet that Doyan could hear his own heartbeat. But I didn't need to save him. He saved himself, and he saved all of them. Ravik's voice filled with something that sounded like pride. That 8-year-old human child ran out of the station alone, making himself the target. He led the Scarvan away from the shelters where the other humans were hiding, away from his mother, toward the mountains where he knew the terrain better than any of us. I followed as fast as I could, dragging my broken body through the snow. When I found them, I saw something I will never forget. The child had lured the Scarvan into a narrow canyon. He had rigged explosive charges, mining equipment from the research station, set them in the ice walls above. As the Scarvan charged at him, certain of an easy kill, Doyon triggered the explosives. Ravik's voice rose. An avalanche buried them both. Tons of ice and rock. The Scarvan was crushed instantly. And there in the settling snow, I found the child. He had wedged himself into a crack in the rocks, protecting his small body while the mountain fell around him. Bruised, half frozen, but alive. And when he saw me, he smiled. Several beings in the audience were leaning forward now, completely absorbed in the story. The boy's distraction, his trap, gave me the opening I needed. While the Scarvan was focused on him, I was able to position myself. When it was over, when we were both alive and the monster was dead, I performed the ritual. I made this child my brother in the way of my people. Ravik placed both hands on Doyen's shoulders, looking directly at him. I told him that he had the heart of a hunter, that he showed courage that warriors 3 times his size could not match, that when he grew up, he would be a force to be reckoned with, and I promised I would find him again. He turned back to the crowd. Now you understand. This is not some ceremonial brotherhood. This is not politics. This human, when he was a small child, showed me what true strength means. Not size, not claws or teeth or scales, but courage, intelligence, the willingness to sacrifice yourself for others. Velkara stood slowly, his scales pale. Hunter Chief, I spoke disrespectfully to your brother. I did not know. I did not understand. No, you did not, Ravik agreed coldly. And you are not alone. I have heard how many of you treat the humans here, how you mock them for being small, for being new to the stars, for not having the warrior traditions you pride yourselves on. You are fools. All of you. Another delegate spoke up carefully. With respect, Hunter Chief, they are still a young species. They have much to learn. They have much to teach, Ravik corrected. Humans are persistence hunters. Do you understand what that means? Ravik's question hung in the air. Many beings in the hall shifted uncomfortably, unsure how to answer. The Hunter Chief looked around the assembled delegates, his golden eyes challenging them. You hunt by ambush, he said, pointing to a feline species in the front row. You wait in hiding and strike fast. If the prey escapes, you give up and find easier targets. He turned to another section. You hunt in packs, overwhelming prey with numbers and coordination. Efficient, but if the prey proves too difficult, you move on. His gaze swept across the Vexith delegation. My people pride themselves on our tracking abilities. We can follow a trail for days, but if we lose the scent, if the hunt takes too long, we eventually abandon it and return home. Humans don't do that, Ravik continued. On their birth world, they evolved as persistence hunters. They would pick a target and follow it. For hours, for days, for weeks if needed. The prey would run and the humans would walk after it. The prey would rest and the humans would keep coming. Eventually, the prey would collapse from exhaustion and the humans would be there, still walking, still hunting, never stopping. He let that sink in for a moment. Humans are not the fastest species, not the strongest, not the biggest or most frightening, but they are the most dangerous because they never give up, they never stop. They hunt you with patience and time itself. Doyon sat very still, listening to Ravik describe his species in ways he had never quite thought about before. His mother, Minseo, had told him stories about early humans on Earth, but hearing it from the Hunter Chief gave those stories new weight. Let me tell you more about that child, Ravik said, his voice softer now. When I first saw him in the snow, I thought he was just a curious young one who didn't understand danger. But I was wrong. He understood perfectly. That first day after, he brought me medical supplies. I asked him why he was helping me. He said, because you need help and I can give it. Simple as that. No expectation of reward, no fear that I might hurt him. He saw a problem and he solved it. The second day, when he came back, I told him to stay away. The Scarvan was hunting, and I didn't want the creature to find him because of me. Do you know what that small human child said? Ravik looked around the hall. He said, you can't walk yet? If that thing finds you, you'll die. So I'm going to keep helping until you can run. A few beings in the audience made sounds that might have been admiration. On the third day, When he came to my hiding place, he was carrying more than supplies. He had explosives. Mining charges from the research station, and he had a plan. Ravik's voice grew stronger, told me he had been watching the Scarvan. He had tracked it, learned its patterns, understood how it moved. An 8-year-old human child, and he was tracking one of the galaxy's most dangerous predators. He explained his plan to me. He would trigger the station's alarms himself, making noise to draw the creature away. He would lead it into the narrow canyon where the walls were unstable. He would set off the charges and bury it. And he would survive because he had already found a safe spot in the rocks where he could shelter. Ravik paused, and his voice took on an edge of anger. I told him no. I told him it was insane, that he would die, that he should let the adults handle it. Do you know what he said? The hall waited. He said the adults don't believe me. They think I'm seeing things because I'm just a kid. If we wait for them to believe me, people will die. You can't protect everyone by yourself. You can barely walk. So I have to do this. That is when I understood, Ravik said quietly. This was not bravery born from ignorance. This was not a child playing at being a hero. This was a human making. The logical choice. The hard choice. The choice that gave everyone the best chance to survive, even if it meant putting himself in terrible danger. Hyjin spoke up from beside Doyon. If I may, Hunter Chief, I know Doyon's mother. May I add some context? Ravik gestured for her to continue. Minseo, Doyon's mother, told me this story years ago when I was vetting him for the diplomatic program. The research station had 12 people. When the alarms went off, she knew immediately what her son had done. She tried to go after him, but the other researchers held her back. They all heard the explosions. They saw the avalanche. They thought Doyon was dead. Hyjin looked at Doyon with something like sadness. Minseo said those minutes of not knowing were the worst of her life. She told me that when they finally found Doyon and the Hunter Chief, when she saw her son was alive, she didn't know whether to hug him or scold him. He was 8 years old and had just fought a monster that adults twice his size couldn't handle. She did both, Doyon said quietly, speaking for the first time since Ravik began his story. She held me and cried and told me I was grounded for the rest of my life. A small smile crossed his face. Then she helped patch up Ravik while we waited for the rescue ships. Your mother is a wise woman, Ravik said. When my people's ships finally arrived, when I was recovered enough to leave that frozen planet, I asked to see Doyon one last time. I performed the full brotherhood ceremony. I gave him one of my hunting knives even though he was far too small to properly hold it, and I made him a promise. The Hunter Chief's expression grew fierce. I told him that I would watch for news of him, that I would follow his life from a distance, that when he became a man, when he stepped forward as a warrior of his people in whatever way humans measure such things, I would find him again. I told him that if anyone ever disrespected him, if anyone ever threatened him, they would answer to me. Ravik turned to face the entire assembly. And now here we are. That small child has grown into this young man. He graduated from Earth's diplomatic academy at the top of his class. He speaks 11 languages. He has studied the cultures and customs of 30 different species. Earth sent him here not because he is young and inexperienced, but because he is their best. Ambassador Thorax spoke up. We had no way of knowing this history, Hunter Chief. The young diplomat's file did not mention. His file did mention it, Hyjin interrupted. There is a classified section noting that Doyon had significant contact with the Vexith at age 8. The details were sealed at the request of the Vexith government for security reasons related to the Scarvan case. I have access to his full records. Most of you do not. Murmurs of surprise rippled through the crowd. Several delegates looked embarrassed. Another human diplomat, a man named Sun Wu, stood from his seat in the audience. If I may add something, Hunter Chief. You speak of Doyen as if his actions at 8 years old were unique. They were remarkable, yes, but not unique for humans. Explain, Ravik said. Humans have a long history of young people performing extraordinary acts. Our children have saved lives, invented things, led movements for change. We have stories going back thousands of years of young humans standing up to injustice, fighting for what's right, protecting others even at great cost to themselves. What Doyon did was incredible, but it was also very human. Sunwoo looked around the hall. You see our youth and think weakness. We see potential. You see our small size and think frailty. We see efficiency. You see our lack of claws and armor and think vulnerability. We see adaptability. We built tools because we didn't have claws. We developed communication and cooperation because we weren't strong enough alone. We became persistence hunters because we couldn't win a direct fight. Everything you think makes us weak is actually the source of our strength, Sunwoo continued. And the sooner Galactic Society understands that, the better. The hall erupted into conversation. Some beings argued with their neighbors, others sat in thoughtful silence. The Vexith delegation looked particularly shaken, whispering among themselves. Valkara stood again, his posture now showing proper respect. Doyun, I spoke to you with disrespect. I mocked you and belittled your people. I was wrong, and I apologize. Will you accept my apology? Doyan looked at the large Vexith warrior for a long moment. I accept your apology, but understand something. You didn't insult me personally. You insulted all humans. Your apology is a start, but you need to show through actions that you meant it. I will, Valkara promised. You have my word. Delegates began standing, offering similar apologies or simply acknowledging they had underestimated Earth's representative. The mood in the hall had shifted completely. After the gathering ended, the station felt different to Doyon, as he walked through the corridors toward his quarters. Beings who had previously ignored him now nodded respectfully or moved aside to let him pass. Some even stopped to introduce themselves properly, asking intelligent questions about Earth's positions on various issues, but it was what happened in private that mattered most. Ravik had requested a meeting room where he could speak with Doyon alone, away from the crowds and politics. They sat across from each other in a small chamber with windows overlooking the stars, and for a while neither spoke. Finally, Ravik broke the silence. You were so small when I last saw you. I could hold you in one arm. Now you are a man. You kept your promise, Doyon replied. You said you would find me when I became a warrior. I never thought of myself that way, but I suppose a diplomat is a kind of warrior. The most important kind, Ravik said. Anyone can fight with weapons. It takes true strength to fight with words, to seek peace instead of conflict, to protect people without violence. That is harder than any hunt I have ever undertaken. He reached into his armor and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. When he unwrapped it, Doyon's breath caught. It was a knife, small and perfectly balanced, with a handle carved from some dark wood. The blade gleamed like captured starlight. You gave me a knife when I was 8, Doyon said softly. I still have it. My mother keeps it safe for me. That was a warrior's knife, Ravik replied. This is a hunter's knife. The blade is made from metals found only on my home world. The handle is carved from the oldest tree in our sacred forest. This knife has been in my family for 12 generations. I want you to have it. Ravik, I can't accept this. It's too valuable, too important to your family. You are my family. Ravik interrupted firmly. You are my brother. This knife belongs with you now. Carry it as a reminder that you do not face these challenges alone, that you have allies, that the hunter chief of the Vexith stands with you. Doyon accepted the knife with both hands, feeling the perfect weight of it. Thank you, elder brother. I will carry it with honor. They sat together for a while longer, sharing stories. Ravik told him about the years of hunting across the frontier, about pirates and criminals and dangerous creatures. Doyon told him about his studies, about learning to understand different species and cultures, about the dreams he had for what humanity could become among the stars. The galaxy will not make it easy for your people, Ravik warned. There are species that have ruled for thousands of years. They see humans as newcomers, children who should be quiet and learn from their elders. They will test you. They will try to limit you. They will offer unfair deals and expect you to accept them. I know, Doyon said. But humans are patient. We're persistent. We'll keep pushing forward, keep proving ourselves, until they have no choice but to see us as equals. Gudravik's golden eyes gleamed with approval. Never lose that determination. It is what makes humans dangerous. Not dangerous like a weapon, but dangerous like an idea that cannot be stopped. The next morning, the formal negotiations began. The main council chamber was arranged with long tables forming a square, with each species having their designated space. Doyan arrived early, dressed in his diplomatic uniform, carrying his datapad and files. When he entered, he found Ravik already there, standing near the human delegations area. The hunter chief had positioned himself like a guard, his massive form unmistakable. Other delegates were arriving, and every single one noticed Ravik's placement. Hajin arrived with the other senior human diplomats, and her eyes widened slightly at seeing Ravik. She approached carefully. "Hunter Chief, while we appreciate your support, you don't need to stand watch over us. We can handle the negotiations." "I know you can," Ravik replied. "I stand here not because you need protection, but because I choose to stand with my brother. Anyone who wishes to negotiate with Earth will see that the Vexith's greatest warrior considers them worthy allies." Hyjin looked at Doyan, then back at Ravik, and smiled. "Well then, we are honored by your presence." As the session began, Doyan noticed immediately how different the atmosphere was. Species that had been planning to lowball Earth's proposals or dismiss their concerns now approached negotiations seriously. When Doyan spoke, beings actually listened instead of checking their devices or whispering among themselves. The negotiations involved mining rights across 12 systems. Earth wanted access to 3 of them, systems rich in rare metals needed for their expanding space industry. Previous proposals had offered them access to only 1 system. In the poorest of the lot, Doyun stood to present Earth's position. His voice was calm and clear as he outlined why humanity needed fair access to resources, backing up every point with data and logical arguments. He spoke simply, without fancy words or diplomatic double talk, making his points easy to understand. When he finished, Velkara surprised everyone by standing. "The Vexith delegation wishes to announce our support for the human proposal. After careful consideration, we believe Earth's request is reasonable and fair." Several other delegates looked shocked. The Vexith had been among those pushing to limit human expansion. Now their most influential member was supporting Earth. Velkara continued, meeting Doyan's eyes. "We have learned that underestimating humans is a mistake. They have proven they belong at this table as equals. We propose accepting their request for 3 systems, provided Earth agrees to share research data from their mining operations." It was a good compromise, fair to both sides. Doyan nodded. "Earth accepts this proposal." Ambassador Thorax looked around the chamber. "Are there any objections to this revised proposal?" A few delegates shifted uncomfortably, but no one spoke up. Having both the humans and the Vexith in agreement, with Ravik literally standing there as a symbol of that alliance, made objecting seem unwise. "Then it is settled," Thorax announced. "Earth will receive mining access to the 3 requested systems in exchange for shared research data." Well negotiated. The session continued through other matters. Doyen caught Hajin's eye. She gave him a small, proud smile. They both knew this was just the beginning. There would be hundreds of other negotiations, other challenges, other species to convince. But today was a good start. When the session finally ended hours later, delegates began filtering out. Several stopped to speak with Doyen, asking questions about Earth's technology, their culture, their plans for expansion. He answered each question patiently, building relationships one conversation at a time. Velkara approached last. "That was well done today. You negotiated fairly and stood your ground when necessary. I see now why Earth chose you for this role." "Thank you," Doyen replied. "And thank you for your support in the proposal. It was the right thing to do," Velkara said. "I spoke with my people last night after the Hunter Chief's story. We discussed how we have treated your delegation. We were wrong. Strength comes in many forms, and we were too blind to see the strength humans possess." After Velkara left, Doyan found himself alone in the chamber with Ravik. The Hunter Chief had remained silent throughout the entire session, but his presence had spoken volumes. "You did not need me today," Ravik observed. "You would have won them over with your words and logic eventually." Maybe Doyen agreed, but having you here shortened the process by months or years. Sometimes the message matters less than the messenger who delivers it. Your presence told everyone that humans have powerful friends, that we're not alone or easy to bully. You are learning the deeper games of politics, Ravik said with approval. That is good. But remember, little brother, you should never need to rely only on my reputation or anyone else's. Your own strength is enough, I know. But I also know that humans survive by working together, by making allies, by building networks of support. Using every advantage available isn't weakness. It's strategy. Ravik's laugh rumbled like distant thunder. You have indeed grown wise. The child who made traps in the ice has become a man who makes traps from words and relationships. I am proud of you. That evening, Doyan stood at the window in his quarters, looking out at the stars. The station's lights reflected off nearby ships and platforms, creating a web of light in the darkness. Somewhere out there was Earth, his home. The small blue planet that had sent him here to speak for them. His datapad chimed with an incoming message. It was from his mother, Minseo. She had heard about what happened, about Ravik's arrival and the story he told. Her message was short. I always knew you were special. Now everyone else knows too. Make us proud, but more importantly, stay safe. Love, Mom. Doyan smiled and typed a reply. I will. The negotiations are going well. Tell everyone at home that we're making progress. And Mom, Ravik says hello. He still remembers your terrible coffee. As he sent the message, he touched the knife Ravik had given him, hanging now in a place of honor on his wall. The blade caught the starlight, gleaming like a promise. The galaxy was vast, and humanity was small. But small didn't mean weak. It never had. Humans had climbed to the top of Earth's food chain without claws or fangs or armor. They had reached the stars without naturally evolved technology or ancient knowledge. They had done it through persistence, through intelligence, through the simple, stubborn refusal to give up.